You're listening to the Everything Jewish 10 Minutes at a Time podcast, where you'll learn about every Jewish topic imaginable in about 10 minutes. And as always, I apologize for all of my Hebrew pronunciation. I know I'm going to pronounce Hebrew words wrong, so instead of getting annoyed, I give you permission to laugh at how I say things. Today's topic is Ethiopian Jews, also known as Beta Yisrael. If you've ever wondered how far and wide Jewish history stretches, Ethiopian Jews are Exhibit A. This community, living in the highlands of Ethiopia for centuries, developed unique Jewish traditions that look both familiar and strikingly different. Imagine celebrating Passover without matzah boxes from the supermarket, or practicing ancient Torah readings without a printed Talmud. Beta Israel held on to Jewish identity through isolation, oral tradition, and resilience. For much of the world, they were unknown, until dramatic rescue operations in the late 20th century brought thousands to Israel. Today, Ethiopian Jews enrich Israeli culture with their music, food, and faith. While navigating challenges of integration and identity, their story is one of survival, faith, and rediscovery, proof that Judaism really is a global family with many voices. So how did Jews end up in Ethiopia in the first place? That's one of the great historical debates. Some trace Ethiopian Jewry back to the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, with their descendants settling in Ethiopia. Others suggest Jewish communities migrated south after the destruction of the First Temple, or that they descended from the lost tribe of Dan. Historical evidence is murky, but what's clear is that Jewish practices took root in Ethiopia very early. For centuries, Beta Israel lived in isolated villages, farming, weaving, and practicing a form of Judaism that developed independently of rabbinic tradition. They didn't know about the Talmud or later rabbinic rulings. Instead, their religious life centered on the Torah, oral tradition, and a priestly class called Kesim. Whether through Sheba, Dan, or another route, the fact that they held on to Jewish identity across millennia is extraordinary. Religiously, Ethiopian Jews developed unique practices. Their Torah was written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian language. They observed Shabbat, circumcision, dietary laws, and biblical holidays like Passover and Sukkot, but often with their own customs. Without exposure to rabbinic Judaism, Beta Israel's practice was strikingly biblical. For example, they offered sacrifices in the distant past, long after rabbinic Judaism had shifted to prayer. They also celebrated holidays like Sigd, a day of fasting, prayer, and reaffirmation of the covenant, celebrated 50 days after Yom Kippur. Sigd has since been adopted as an official holiday in Israel. Leadership came from the Kesim, spiritual leaders who maintained ritual life, taught Torah, and preserved identity. Theirs was a Judaism of resilience, preserved in isolation, echoing ancient practices, and proving that Jewish life adapts in amazing ways. Daily life in Ethiopia for Beta Israel was often difficult. They lived in rural, mountainous areas, farming barley, millet, and beans, raising animals, and weaving cotton. Their villages were tightly knit, centered around synagogues. But they faced discrimination from neighbors, often labeled falasha, outsiders or strangers, a derogatory term. They were sometimes denied land ownership, forced into specific trades, and persecuted for their distinct identity. Despite hardships, they held on to their faith. Jewish identity wasn't just religion. It was the rhythm of life, woven into farming cycles, food, and family. Their survival speaks volumes about determination. Imagine being cut off from the broader Jewish world for centuries and still clinging to Torah. That's Beta Israel, remote but unshaken, marginalized but proud. The 20th century brought dramatic changes. With the founding of Israel in 1948, questions arose. Were Ethiopian Jews considered halakhically Jewish? After much debate, Israel's chief rabbinate recognized them under the Law of Return in 1975. This paved the way for mass immigration. But political instability in Ethiopia made things complicated and dangerous. Enter the famous rescue missions. Operation Moses in 1984 airlifted thousands of Ethiopian Jews from refugee camps in Sudan to Israel. It was perilous, secret treks through deserts, deaths along the way, and a covert international operation that saved lives. A few years later, Operation Solomon in 1991 airlifted over 14,000 Ethiopian Jews to Israel in just 36 hours, using packed military planes. These daring rescues became legendary, modern-day exoduses, with Jews once again leaving danger for the Promised Land. Life in Israel wasn't easy at first. Ethiopian Jews faced culture shock, from rural farms to modern cities. They had to adjust to new languages, technology, and a very different form of Judaism dominated by Ashkenazi and Sephardi traditions. Many encountered racism and discrimination. Professionals like doctors or teachers in Ethiopia often found themselves starting over in Israel with lower status jobs. At the same time, the community preserved its pride and fought for inclusion. Protests for equality have been part of Ethiopian Israeli life for decades. Slowly, Ethiopian Jews have carved out their place, with leaders, rabbis, and activists advocating for visibility. Integration hasn't been perfect, but younger generations are increasingly represented in politics, the arts, the military, and sports. Culturally, Ethiopian Jews enrich Israel in countless ways. Their food, think injera, spicy stews, lentils, and doro, has become part of Israel's culinary mosaic. Their music, with influences from traditional Ethiopian scales and instruments, blends beautifully with Israeli pop. Artists like Idan Reichel and Esther Rada have brought Ethiopian sounds to the mainstream. Fashion, art, and literature from the community add new voices to Israeli culture. Religious life also carries Ethiopian flavor. Sigd is now celebrated nationally, with gatherings in Jerusalem that mix ancient chants with modern recognition. Ethiopian Jews didn't just assimilate, they transformed Israeli culture by adding their unique colors to the mix. Religiously, integration came with challenges. Because Beta Israel developed separately, their rituals sometimes differed from mainstream rabbinic Judaism. For example, their Kesim priests had traditions that didn't align with rabbinic authority. In Israel, there were tensions about conversion or reaffirmation ceremonies, sparking debates about authenticity. Some Ethiopian Jews embraced rabbinic practices, while others held on to Kesim traditions. Over time, many synagogues blended both, honoring Ethiopian heritage while connecting to broader Jewish norms. Today, you'll find Ethiopian Israelis attending mainstream synagogues, but also preserving their unique songs, liturgy, and customs. Their religious journey continues to evolve, showing how Judaism adapts when worlds meet. Ethiopian Jews also remind the Jewish world of its diversity. For centuries, European Jews wondered if Beta Israel were really Jewish. The answer turned out to be a resounding yes. Their survival against all odds broadened the definition of what Jewish life looks like. Dark-skinned Jews speaking Amharic, eating injera, and celebrating Sigd are just as much a part of the Jewish family as Yiddish-speaking Jews eating kugel in Brooklyn. That diversity enriches everyone. In a time when identity debates run hot, Beta Israel's story is a reminder. Judaism is global, adaptable, and deeply varied. Whether in Addis Ababa, Tel Aviv, or Los Angeles, Ethiopian Jews carry traditions that stretch Jewish imagination and expand its borders. So that's Ethiopian Jews in about 10 minutes, an ancient community rooted in the highlands of Ethiopia, practicing biblical-style Judaism with their own leaders, foods, and songs. Uprooted by danger, they were rescued in daring operations and brought to Israel, where they continue to face challenges and triumphs. Their music fills Israeli radios, their food fills Israeli tables, and their traditions remind Jews everywhere that identity comes in many forms. Thanks for joining me for this tour of Ethiopian Jews. Stick around for the next episode, where we'll explore another Jewish topic in about 10 minutes. Until then, may your injera stay fluffy, your memories of Sigd stay sweet, and your Jewish story always feel as global as the Beta Yisrael journey.